It feels like these days you gotta be extra careful with what kind of game you're buying on Steam, because imagine you accidentally get caught playing something that's considered woke. Like Baldur's Gate 3, for example, with their woke character creators. You can sleep around with just about anybody, you got the pronouns and everything. Oh no, we just can't have that here, no. Or to make matters worse, imagine you accidentally boot up a game that's considered based, like Soul Ash 2, where the marriage mechanic is only for having kids and a legacy. My human character can't bang the goblins or the elves, so now I got everyone on Twitter calling me a chud for some reason, and I'm forced to take sides on this culture war that I didn't even know existed in the first place. Games these days aren't about having fun anymore, everything's been politicized and bastardized, studios are getting their stories disinfected by agencies so they don't risk accidentally offending anybody, but also at the same time, adding an optional rainbow flag cosmetic automatically puts you in a hit list of games that are considered woke. It's like whatever game comes out these days automatically gets you sorted into one of these two political categories, and just by playing them, that means that you're supporting one side's ideology. And now we got woke game engines, we got based game engines, and everybody's forced to play along and take sides. It's like you just can't even be happy anymore, and you can't even talk about the games you're enjoying on social media, because apparently that means that you're spreading the message of wokeness or baseness, if that's even a word. But whatever label people decide to give you on the internet, just know that you're gonna get hated on either way. Like me wanting to level up my smithing in old school RuneScape apparently makes me woke in the eye of Twitter, because the game decided to add a pronoun selector and AB body types recently. You know, despite the fact that I've been playing RuneScape for years at this point, now all of a sudden I'm considered a wokey. But it's like at the same time, I'm also not allowed to mention that I like Stellar Blade or that I play the First Descendant, for example, because if I do that, I'm gonna get cancelled, because how dare I play games that have attractive women on them? Like, you guys should know this already, but you're only allowed to enjoy video games if the main character looks like they'd be on the Concord roster. This whole woke versus anti-woke debate that I see in the gaming industry is literally everything that you find in social media these days. Like, it's so weird to see people enter this state of tribalism and just attack each other over like the stupidest things they can find in video games. Now, there's no clear-cut definition of what woke or based really means. You know, it's all words at the end of the day that people made up. But basically, if the game features too many LGBTQ characters, if it's pushing the message of inclusivity, if you specify the character's pronouns or you make most of the roster be DEI, then that's a really easy way to get your game featured on the official woke games list that has over 1,500 entries at this point, giving out recommendations whether you should play these games or not. So remember, guys, that if you're based, if you're out here trying to own the wokies, you're not allowed to play anything that's on this list, like Call of Duty Warzone, for example, because it has overtly pro-LGBTQ images, multiple pride flag calling cards and emblems. Terraria's also off limits too. Minecraft is a no. Let me see what else I can find here. Ah, of course, Super Lesbian Animal RPG. Man, I was just about to get into this one too. Damn. What a shame. A lot of the reasons why they list games here as woke is mainly because of the LGBTQ messaging and like the pride flags. Like if you scroll through this document, you'll notice that mostly what you're gonna see on the not recommended side is like, oh, it has LGBTQ in the game. And you see, the problem with this list and the way that they categorize the games we play is that there's no nuance or spectrum here. You have a game like Another Crab's Treasure, for example, that only features an optional rainbow cosmetic item with a pride flag, but it's being put in the same bin as Dustborn. That's a game that's specifically made to be politically charged. It's supposed to be woke. It was even funded by the government of Norway to help develop it. So it's like I mentioned, a lot of people here just don't have any nuance when it comes to this sort of thing. Like, everybody wants to be like a Sith Lord because now you deal with absolutes and everything. You're either with me or you're my enemy. There's no common ground we can find. So something as simple as an optional cosmetic is enough to get you canceled by this side. And if you thought that figuring out what game is woke was already a pain in the ass, try defining a game that's based, because that's almost impossible. You know, no one's out here purposely trying to make an anti-LGBTQ game. At least not one that I can think of, but I guess a good example of a game that's considered based is the one I mentioned earlier called Soul Ash 2, where it's supposed to be a sandbox RPG roguelike, and you know, like I mentioned, it has a romance mechanic where you can marry and have children since your characters can die of old age. And when some people in the community asked the developer if they were to add same-sex marriage or be able to like marry across different races like the humans with the orcs and the goblins, well, the developer simply said, hey guys, you know, the marriage mechanic is simply for adding a legacy system in the game, so no, there's no plans on adding same-sex marriage into it. And can you believe that that was enough reasons for people to start a hate campaign against this developer, where they tried to review bomb the game, they were calling him all sorts of things on social media, they tried to bully and pressure him into complying with the masses and tell him what to do with his game. You know, the game that he made by himself. And because he stood his ground and didn't want to change his vision for Soul Ash 2, that was enough to have the people label the game as based. And the same thing unfortunately happens with a lot of these games that don't really follow the norm on social media, where the more concord your game looks like, the more woke and accepting it is. So like simply by putting an attractive woman in your game, that's enough for people to consider yourself not inclusive, not accepting, and it's enough for people to target your game and label it as based. Even if you weren't even considering that in the first place, because I'm sure that the developers of Black Myth Wukong, for example, they don't even know that there's a culture war blowing up on Twitter because of their game. They're just out there doing their own thing. But there's an entire faction that actively is wishing for their downfall because hot women are bad, while the other faction is just taking it as some sort of moral victory for their side, going like, hey, look at these guys, they're listening to me. We're winning, guys, they're listening to me. When, you know, the reality of things is that they don't care. They just don't care. They're just doing what they want to do. And obviously, look, we can't deny that in certain media, like in movies, TV shows, and especially in video games too, there are certain studios that are trying to push some sort of agenda or message onto the audience, and they're trying to gaslight people into thinking that it's not really happening. Or sometimes they'll just outright tell you, like, hey, if you don't like our message, don't buy our game. Which then people proceed to not buy the game and then get called bigots for it because how dare you not buy our game? All this nonsense really just makes me miss the time where people were just excited to play a game because they liked how the game played. Not what ideology the studio was supporting, not what kind of fan base does it have. Like, I miss getting my hands on Monster Hunter 3 for the Nintendo Wii, and the only thing I cared about figuring out was which weapon I was gonna try first. Not how many genders you can make your character be. But a lot of the times, people just use this as fuel to keep the hate train going for both sides, and it's like they want you to keep participating on the culture war. They want the satisfaction of knowing that the game they made is pissing off a specific group of people, but at the end of the day, it's all pointless arguments, you know? Like, let me tell you exactly what you're gonna expect if you decide to get involved with this whole online culture war nonsense. You're gonna be constantly bashing the other side for the dumbest and the pettiest reasons, like, for example, old school RuneScape added the AB body types? Well, sorry cis white men, this game was never for you. Oh wait, Concord just flopped 2 weeks after the game's release and it couldn't break 700 players? Hey, go woke, go broke, wokies. You know, it's like people are way too busy arguing on Twitter to get any actual gaming done. They're just looking for reasons to dunk on the other side, and it's not like they're gonna change anyone's mind over all these pointless arguments because, you know, at the end of the day, it's the internet. You're just shouting into the void. Overall, it's a net loss and a waste of time for everybody involved in this. And the fact that the problem made its way to the actual development studios where they're purposely antagonizing and alienating a part of the player base just to be able to please a small section of consumers is honestly just really sad to see how it's no longer player versus player on some ridiculous online argument, because now you have the developers and the game itself trying to score some points by taking political sides. And it's like really hard trying to be that guy who's in the middle, who just wants to play games and have fun and enjoy them, because even voicing your opinion online can get you banned on the game's official account just for like having the most normal take in existence. But the question on everybody's mind, how do we deal with this? How do we solve the woke versus based argument? Well, it's actually pretty simple. If you don't like the fact that Starfield has pronouns and that just happens to be a deal breaker for you, don't buy Starfield. If the developer of Soul Ash 2 decides not to add same-sex marriage to his game and that's a deal breaker for you, don't buy Soul Ash. Like, the cool thing about the gaming industry is that there's not a supply problem for games to play. There's almost an endless catalogs of games that are out there. It's not like we're in the N64 era anymore where all you had to play was Smash Bros, Banjo-Kazooie, Diddy Kong Racing. You know, if you don't like a game, there's no reason for you to harass the developers or start a hate campaign online. It's really just as easy as closing your wallet, don't give them money, and just go find another game to play. I think the gaming industry as a whole would just improve tremendously if we just recognize that some games just aren't made for us specifically. They're meant to cater to a different audience, and that's perfectly okay. Like, we shouldn't be raising pitchforks or trying to bully games and studios into adding the things we want or removing certain flags or anything. Like, if the game has a pronoun selector and it sells well, then that means that there's enough people who are okay with having a pronoun selector to make the game profitable and keep playing it. But, you know, that doesn't mean that every game should have a pronoun selector or that we should pressure studios into adding them into their games. You know, just let people enjoy what they want. Just let people play the things that they want, and maybe we can find some common ground here and there. Like, maybe we can go back to doing the one thing that gaming is really about, and it's not looking for reasons to hate on social media. Trust me, that's not the reason. It's really just to get out there, play games, distract yourself, and just have fun. That's it. But yeah, Anyways, guys, that's all I really want to talk about with you guys today, so thank you for watching.